Dodge City, Kansas, 1886. The Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway rolled into Dodge City at 2:14 in the afternoon, 12 minutes late, which was considered on time by anyone who had been taking the westbound for more than a year. Lydia Marlowe stepped onto the platform with a trunk, a travel bag, and a daughter. The platform smelled of coal smoke and creosote. The Baldwin locomotive exhaled a column of black soot that rolled back over the passenger cars whenever the wind shifted. The station's cedar boards were worn gray and sticky with heat. Dodge City was doing what Dodge City did in October of 1886, finishing the work of becoming a cattle town that had outlived the cattle drives. Its famous saloons were now half converted to feed stores and dry goods operations as the barbed wire slowly strangled the open range. Lydia had grown up here. She had left at 19 because her parents had decided that a penniless blacksmith's apprentice, a boy with soot on his collar, no land to his name, and a forge he didn't own, wasn't the future their daughter deserved. She had not been strong enough at 19 to disagree with them out loud. She had been strong enough to regret it for 16 years, which was a different kind of strength and not a useful one. "Mama," said Nora. "Yes. Is that him?" Lydia looked at the trunk the porter was unloading. She did not look in the direction her daughter was looking. "Nora, the tall one with the hat. Your chin did the thing." Nora's voice was matter-of-fact, the voice of a child filing an observation. "It always does the thing when you think about Dodge City." "My chin did not do a thing. Mama, it does the same thing it did when you look at Papa's old watch." Lydia finally looked. Silas Reed was standing at the far end of the platform with a piece of paper in his hand that he had apparently stopped reading when the westbound arrived. He was 38 years old and had the look of a man who had spent 20 years at a forge, the set of the shoulders, the hands that were never quite clean. He had not seen her yet. "Mama," Nora said, "he's looking now." He was. Lydia Marlowe had rehearsed this moment for 200 miles and had prepared several versions of a dignified greeting, and none of them were available to her at this particular second. Silas Reed looked at her from the far end of the Dodge City platform with the expression of a man who has been surprised by something he had stopped expecting. Nora looked at Silas. She looked at her mother. Then she walked directly toward him with the confidence of an 8-year-old who has identified a situation that requires management and has appointed herself. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Silas Reed?" He looked down at her. "Yes," he said. "My mama never forgot you," Nora said. "She told me when she didn't know I was listening." She folded her hands in front of her like a small diplomat delivering credentials. "I'm Nora. My papa died 2 years ago. He was a good man even though he didn't know anything about horses." The platform was not small. It felt very small. The thing about Dodge City was that it had a memory. Not an unkind memory. It was simply a town that had been the same size long enough that everyone's history was everyone else's general knowledge. They had grown up together. They had been together for 2 years before she left, the kind of couple a town watches with the interest of people who can see something clearly that the participants cannot quite see yet. Then her parents had looked at a blacksmith's apprentice with soot on his collar and no land and decided that was not what their daughter's future required. Lydia had gotten on a train to Kansas City and married Arthur Marlowe, who owned a dry goods operation and had prospects in abundance. Arthur had been a good man. She had been faithful to him in every way that mattered. When he died of pneumonia 2 winters ago, she had grieved honestly. What she had never been able to explain to herself was why, on 3 nights in 16 years, nights when sleep wouldn't come and the house was too quiet, she had said Silas Reed's name out loud in the dark. Not to anyone, just said it. The way you say the name of a place you were supposed to go and never went. Nora had heard her once, maybe twice. Children heard more than anyone gave them credit for. Silas had stayed. He had become the best blacksmith in Ford County, not just horseshoes and wagon rims, but the new McCormick reaper parts the wheat farmers needed as the cattle drives died off, and the barbed wire tensioners that were dividing the old open range into somebody's property. The forge was legitimate work, and the forge was his, and he had built the kind of life that was solid if you didn't look too hard at the extra bedroom. The town had been looking at that extra bedroom for 3 years. Martha at the dry goods store had a theory. Pete at the feed store had the same theory. Reverend Cole had his own conclusions, arrived at from a pastoral distance that had not prevented him from reaching them. When the westbound arrived 12 minutes late on a Tuesday afternoon and Lydia Marlowe stepped onto the platform with a trunk and a daughter and a chin that did the thing, the information moved through Dodge City with the speed of information in a town that has been waiting for something and recognizes it when it arrives. Martha knew within 4 minutes. By the time Nora had crossed the platform and delivered her opening statement, approximately 11 people in the immediate vicinity were listening with the committed attention of people who have been invested in an outcome for 16 years. It was not graceful. Silas walked over because there was nothing else to do after Nora had said what she said and the platform had gone quiet. "Lydia," he said. "Silas." She looked at her daughter. "I'm sorry about." "I have a filter," Nora said preemptively. "I just don't always use it when it matters." Silas looked down at her. "How old are you?" 8. "You're the blacksmith. Mama said you know about horses. Do you know about the new McCormick reapers, too? There was one at the station in Kansas City, and the blades were—" "Nora," Lydia said, "I was getting to the horses." Something moved through Silas's face. Not quite a smile. The place a smile comes from before it arrives. He crouched down to her level. "I know about horses," he said. "And yes, I work on the McCormick reapers. The number 4 has a blade tensioner that breaks about every 2 months if the farmer doesn't. Can I see the forge?" Nora said. "Nora," Lydia said again, "he hasn't said yes." Silas looked up at Lydia from his crouch, 16 years on the same platform where they had last stood together. She looked the same and completely different, in the way of someone who has lived a full life since you last knew them. "She can see the forge," he said. He stood up. He looked at Lydia with the dark eyes that had always been direct. "You're staying." "I'm hoping to," she said. "The school board said there was a position." "There is. Mrs. Briggs took ill in September. I wrote to them in August." He looked at her. "You planned this." "I planned to come back," she said. "I didn't plan." She didn't finish. He looked at the trunk, at Nora, who had moved from him to a thorough examination of the locomotive's drive wheel. He looked at Lydia. "I'll get the trunk," he said. "You don't have to." "I know," he said. He picked it up. Lydia watched him carry it and thought, 16 years, and he still moves exactly like that. She told herself not to think it. She thought it again anyway. Martha at the dry goods store was the first to have a direct conversation with Lydia. This happened on Thursday morning when Lydia came in for supplies for the boarding house room she was renting until the school position was confirmed. Martha had been running the store for 20 years and had developed the conversational skill of obtaining a great deal of information while appearing to discuss something else. By the end of the transaction, she had confirmed Lydia was a widow of 2 years, was hoping to stay permanently, had a daughter of 8, and had mentioned Silas Reed exactly once, in a sentence about the trunk, in the tone of someone being very careful not to mention something. "He never married," Martha said as Lydia gathered her purchases. "I heard 2 courtships, both ended. Nobody quite knew why. He built a large house, larger than he needed." "That's practical planning," Lydia said. "You need room to grow into." "That's one interpretation." Lydia looked at her. Martha looked back with the serene expression of a woman who has made her point and is content to let it settle. "Martha," Lydia said. "Yes. How long has the town been waiting for me to come back?" Martha considered this with the seriousness it deserved. "Since before your daughter was born," she said. Lydia picked up her supplies. "I appreciate the hope, but I left in a way that," she stopped. Silas was 22. I was 19. And I chose to go. She held Martha's gaze. "That's mine to account for, not my parents'." Martha wrapped the last package. "People grow into different sizes than their parents expected," she said. "Good morning, Martha," Lydia said. "Good morning, Lydia." Martha watched her leave and then went to the back window that faced the alley behind the forge. Silas was at the anvil. He was working on a barbed wire tensioner, which required exact, controlled strikes. The first one he threw into the scrap bucket. The second he stood at the anvil for a long moment. Then he started over. The school confirmed the position on Friday. Lydia went to tell Silas because Nora had, on Wednesday, extracted from him a promise about horses contingent on the school confirmation, and Nora had been asking about it every 4 hours since. She found him at the forge. The heat hit her at the door, 200 degrees hotter than the October air outside, the smell of hot iron and coal, and the chemical sting of cooling metal. He was working on a wagon wheel rim, the iron orange in the fire, moving it with tongs to the anvil and shaping it with controlled strikes. She stood in the doorway. She told herself she was waiting for a natural pause. She watched him work. There was something in the way Silas Reed worked that she had remembered correctly for 16 years, complete absorption, as if the wheel rim was the only thing in the world that mattered right now, and it was going to be right. Arthur had been a capable businessman. Arthur had never once been entirely absorbed by anything. This was not a fair comparison. She made it anyway. He looked up. He saw her. He set down the hammer. "The school confirmed it," she said. "I'm staying." "Congratulations. Nora wants the horse visit." "Saturday," he said, "if that works." "Saturday works." She looked at the forge, at the wheel rim, at him. "Silas." He waited. "I'm sorry," she said, "for how I left. I was 19 and I chose wrong, and I have known it was wrong since the morning I got on that train." She held his gaze. "That's what I've been needing to say for 16 years." He held her gaze with the eyes that had always been direct. He was quiet for a long moment. "Then you had a good life," he said. "Didn't you, with Arthur?" "Yes," she said. "He was good to me. He was good to Nora." She paused. "It wasn't," she stopped herself. He looked at the wheel rim. He looked at her. "I built a house," he said. 3 bedrooms. I told myself it was practical. Martha told me," she said. "Martha tells everyone." "Is she wrong?" He held her gaze. "No," he said, "she is not wrong." Lydia looked at her boots. She thought about a silver ring on her right hand, Arthur's, moved there after he died, and about the difference between a good life and the life you were supposed to have. "Saturday," she said. "Nora will have questions ready." "I expect she will," he said. She left. He picked up the hammer. He put it down. He stood at the forge for a long moment. Then he picked it up again, because the wheel rim required it, and because sometimes work is the only honest thing available. Saturday arrived in Dodge City, and Nora had a list of questions longer than Silas was expecting. The forge visit went well. Nora arrived with 11 questions about horses and 4 about the McCormick Reaper and 1 about whether blacksmiths ever made weapons, which Silas answered honestly and at appropriate length. She named the mare Belle before he had introduced her. Belle allowed it. But Saturday also brought something Lydia had not anticipated. His name was Harlan Cross. He had arrived in Dodge City 6 months ago from Wichita with enough money to buy the old Granger Hotel and enough charm to make the town council feel that this was an improvement. He was 45 years old, prosperous, and had been asking Martha questions about the new schoolteacher since Thursday morning. He appeared at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house on Saturday evening with his hat in his hands and an invitation to Sunday dinner at the hotel. Lydia received him politely. She declined the dinner. He came back Monday. He came back Wednesday. He was not aggressive about it, just persistent, in the way of a man who had decided something and was applying resources toward it. Martha watched this from across the street. On Thursday morning, she went to the forge. Silas was working. She stood in the doorway without ceremony. "Harlan Cross has been to Patterson's 3 times, she said. Silas kept working. "I heard," he said. "He's taking her to the church social Sunday." "I heard that, too," he said. He struck the iron. He struck it again. "Silas," Martha said. "Yes. That man has money and a hotel, and he is not going to wait." Silas set down the hammer. He looked at the anvil. He looked at his hands. He looked at Martha with the expression of a man who has been patient for 16 years and is now calculating the difference between patience and losing. "I know," he said. Martha looked at him steadily. "She's not Arthur's widow anymore," she said. "She's been Lydia since she got off that train. She left." Silas stood at the forge for a long time. He thought about a 3-bedroom house on the ridge. He thought about Will rims thrown into the scrap bucket. He thought about a chin that did the same thing it did when she looked at a dead man's watch. He took off his apron. He walked to the schoolhouse. She was at the teacher's desk reviewing November lessons when he came through the door. He was still in his work clothes. He had not stopped to change. She noticed this. "Harlan Cross," he said. "Silas, I'm not asking you to account for it," he said. "I'm telling you I know about it." He put his hat on the desk. He stood across from her with the cold, dark hands and the direct eyes and 16 years of Dodge City between them. "I've been patient," he said. "I am good at patient. I have been patient since the morning you got on that train and I stood on this same platform and watched you go and told myself you were right to go." His voice was level. "I was wrong about that." She looked at his hat on her desk. "I built that house," he said. 3 bedrooms. Every timber in it has been waiting." He held her gaze. "Harlan Cross has money. He has a hotel. He is not the man who knows which room Nora would want before she asked about it." He paused. "The window that faces the stable. She mentioned it on Saturday. I know that's the room." Lydia looked at the lesson plans for November. She looked at Arthur's ring on her right hand. She looked at Silas, at the man who had stayed in a town because it was where the truth could be found, who had thrown 2 wool rims into the scrap bucket that morning, who had walked to the schoolhouse without changing his clothes because some things did not wait for a change of clothes. "Silas," she said. "Yes. I am not going to Sunday dinner with Harlan Cross." He held very still. "I came back to Dodge City," she said. "I did not come back for the school position." She met his gaze. "I have known for 16 years what I was supposed to do. I was just not ready to do it until I could do it honestly, not out of grief or longing, but because I chose it." She took Arthur's ring from her right hand. She held it for a moment. She set it on the desk beside his hat. "He was good to me," she said, "and I will love him for that until I die. But I'm done carrying this like an apology." Silas looked at the ring. He looked at her. He walked around the desk. He stood in front of her and took both her hands, the work-roughened hands of a blacksmith who had spent 16 years making things that were meant to hold. She held them back. "I would like to court you," he said properly. "I know," she said. "I'll let you." "But Silas." "Yes." "Don't be slow about it," she said. He almost laughed, the real one, the kind that changes a whole face. No, he said. I won't. She found out on Sunday morning from Mrs. Patterson, who had seen Silas leaving the schoolhouse at dusk on Thursday and had drawn the correct conclusion with the speed of a woman who had been drawing correct conclusions about Dodge City for 30 years. Nora received this information while eating breakfast. She finished her eggs. She thought about it. On Monday afternoon, she went to the forge. I need to ask you something, she said. Silas had learned in the preceding 2 weeks that when Nora Marlowe said she needed to ask something, the correct response was to stop and give her the full conversation. He set down the tongs. You're going to be our family, she said. Not a question, an accounting. He held her gaze. That's what I'm hoping. She looked at the forge. She looked at the anvil. She looked at him with the brown eyes that had been conducting a comprehensive assessment since the platform. My papa was good, she said. He taught me how to read, and he fixed my kite once, and he smelled like cinnamon. Her voice was steady, but her chin, the same chin as her mother's, did the thing just slightly. I'm not going to forget him. You shouldn't, Silas said. You're not replacing him, she said. I know that, Silas said. You're something different. Yes, he said. She looked at her boots. I just needed you to know that I know that, she said, that you're not replacing him, because sometimes grown-ups think kids don't understand the difference. She looked up. I understand the difference. Silas crouched down to her level. He looked at her directly. Nora, he said, your father sounds like a good man. I would not try to replace a good man. He held her gaze. What I am trying to do is be someone who is there every morning for a long time. She studied him. This was a girl who had asked 11 questions about horses and 4 about reapers, who had walked across a platform and delivered opening credentials, who had named a strange man's mare without being invited. She was 8 years old and she was deciding something important. There's a room in your house, she said. The one with the window that faces the stable. Yes, he said. I want that room, she said. He nodded slowly. It's yours, he said. She nodded back, the nod of a person concluding a formal arrangement. Then I'm going to name the new kittens before Mama says I can't. They married in December. Not the church social, not the spring, December, because Silas had said he would not be slow about it, and he had meant it. In the Dodge City Church, on a Saturday, with the Kansas winter outside and the whole town present, which was everyone. Martha was in the front row. She had been there since 7 in the morning. Nora was the flower girl. She had researched the appropriate pace. She had 3 opinions about the music and had shared them all with the organist on Friday. The organist had implemented one. Silas stood at the altar in a coat that was not his work clothes. He had bought it specifically. His hands were as clean as a blacksmith's hands ever get, which was not entirely clean. Lydia came down the aisle in a simple cream dress, practical enough to be worn again, which was exactly what she had asked for. She carried wildflowers. She had not wanted roses. She walked toward him and thought about a platform in October and a trunk and a daughter who had delivered opening credentials to a stranger without hesitation. She thought about a chin that did the same thing it did when she looked at a dead man's watch. She thought about Arthur's ring, which was now in a small box in her trunk, not discarded, set aside, the way you set aside something that was real and good and belongs to a chapter that is properly closed. She reached the altar. He looked at her. She looked at him. After the ceremony, outside the church in the December cold, Nora appeared at Silas's side. She had distributed the flower petals with complete accuracy and was conducting a post-ceremony assessment. Silas, she said. Yes. The room, she said. I've been thinking about the window angle. If the bed goes on the north wall, I can see the stable and the street. That's 2 views. He looked at this girl who had walked across a platform on her first day in Dodge City and changed the trajectory of 3 people's lives. "North Wall," he said. "Done." She nodded. She went to find Mrs. Patterson. Martha appeared at Silas's shoulder. 16 years, she said. "Worth it," he said. She looked at him. "Don't let it be another 16 before the next thing." He looked at Lydia across the churchyard, laughing at something Sarah Greer had said, with the laugh that arrived without warning and changed her whole face. "No," he said. "I won't." The room with the window that faced the stable was Nora's. She settled into it with the thoroughness she brought to all environments, the bed on the north wall as agreed, 3 kittens from Mrs. Patterson's barn, whose presence had been negotiated in a separate conversation that Lydia had not been part of and had decided not to investigate. Silas learned that having Nora in the house was an education in paying attention. She noticed the 3rd step creaking. She noticed when Belle was favoring her left foreleg 2 days before the farrier arrived. She noticed that Silas's coffee went cold when he was thinking about something, and she began refilling it without comment. He found he did not mind any of it. He found, in fact, that the house had been exactly the right size. Lydia taught the 4th and 5th grades at the Dodge City School. She was, by all accounts, exceptional. The children liked her. The parents liked her. Mrs. Briggs observed the classroom once and told Martha that it had a quality of productive interest she had spent 20 years trying to achieve. Nora said this was because her mother was very good at asking the right question at the right time. On an evening the following September, Silas was at the workbench in the barn when Lydia came in. She had the expression of a woman who has been thinking about how to say something and has decided that directly is the only honest way. "I have something to tell you," she said. He turned. He understood from her face before she said anything. He thought about a 3-bedroom house built by a 22-year-old who couldn't explain to himself why he needed 3 bedrooms, but knew. "Nora is going to have opinions about the name," he said. "She already has a list," Lydia said. "She's been working on it for 2 months." He looked at her. 2 months. She suspected, Lydia said. She didn't say anything because she was waiting to be sure. Silas thought about an 8-year-old who had walked across a Dodge City platform with folded hands and delivered opening credentials, who had named a stranger's mare and negotiated a room and 3 kittens and a north wall bed placement. He thought about the difference between a child who acts like a small adult and a child who simply pays more attention than adults give her credit for. He thought about Arthur, who had taught her to read and fixed her kite and smelled like cinnamon. He thought about a good life and the right life, and the mercy of getting both in sequence when you were honest enough to let each be what it was. He reached over and took Lydia's hand. "Tell her to bring the list," he said. "I'll hear it after supper." She held his hand. Outside, Dodge City in September was going gold, and the stable smelled of hay and iron, and the particular certainty of a place being used correctly. And everything, the house and the school and the north wall bed and Nora's list and whatever name was at the top of it, was exactly and completely right. Lydia Marlowe came home. She came home to the town she had grown up in, and the man she had left, and the life she had been too young to choose at 19, and had chosen now properly at 35, not out of grief or longing, but because she had cleared the ground first, and could stand on it honestly. She brought a daughter who had no system for the management of things she should not say, which turned out to be exactly what the situation required, because Nora walked across a platform and said, "Mama never forgot you," with the directness of a child who had heard a name said in the dark and understood what it meant. That is the whole of it, really. Silas built a house with 3 bedrooms. He was 22 years old and could not explain to himself why 3, except that he knew. He was right about 3. Some things wait. Some people are worth the waiting. And some 8-year-olds, given the right platform and the right moment, can resolve in 30 seconds what 2 adults would have taken another 16 years to say out loud.